Business Insights on Monday, the 22nd of June, 2020. Business Insights is a very exciting webinar series hosted weekly on Mondays at midday by a panel of industry thought leaders for business owners who simply want to be in the know about the latest and most significant news and initiatives in the Australian business landscape that impact how they do business. Our panel of advisors aim to inform, educate, and provide strategic insights to the changes in the economic and finance landscape that affects small business. We aim to guide our viewers and navigate them through the challenges that their businesses are going to face throughout COVID-19 and beyond. Let's now meet our panel of industry thought leaders. First up, we have Adam Lysle from O'Brien Palmer. Adam, thanks very much for being here.
Good afternoon, Ian, and thanks for having me. I apologise for being away last week, but looking forward to getting into it today.
Excellent, thanks very much. Then we have Sam Garrido from MoneyClip Private Wealth. Sam, welcome.
Hello, thanks Ian, and thanks for viewers. Looking forward to it.
Next up, we have Liza Garrido from Enigma HR. Liza, thanks very much for being here.
Thanks, Ian. Hello, everybody, and hello to our viewers.
Next, we have Rob Skeen from Oasis Skeen Property Buyers Agents. Rob, thank you.
G'day, Ian. Happy Monday, viewers. Thanks for having me.
And then we have Bernard Tusimau from MGA Insurance Brokers. Bernie, thanks very much.
Morning, Ian. Morning, guys. Thanks for having me.
I think today we're going to start with Sam Garrido. So, Sam, I wanted to ask you today, how do lenders establish if they're going to lend to you?
Yeah, very good question. Thank you, Ian. And so when a lender looks at lending, they look at three particular C's. We call them the three C's of lending: capital, character, and capacity. So capital is all about your deposit and your savings, your ability to be able to show that, your ability to be able to show that you've been saving over a period of time. And also show that that is a genuine savings, as in, you haven't been gifted that money. It's something that you have worked on getting that for yourself. Of course, the banks would want to know that you've got a bit of skin in the game, so capital is very important. Then it's character. It's your ability to be able to make repayments. How much credit cards you got, what other debts you have, personal debts, HECS, all that type of stuff, all gets counted towards your character. And your ability to be able to make payments on those on a regular basis is going to show whether you're a good person as a character for the bank to consider lending to. Banks also check, not only they check your accounts, they also check through a credit system, and whereby they can see whether you've missed any of those payments or whether you've made those payments late. And obviously that is going to go towards the character of working out whether you're going to be paying back the loan that they're going to give you. And capacity. And capacity is all about your income and expenses, what you earn and the stability of what you earn. So for example, as a full-time person, as a part-time person, whether you're casual, contractor or self-employed, and the history that goes behind that. So obviously the more you are in your job, the better history and more stability. That means that the bank is more comfortable lending to you. Right now, casual income is difficult because of what's happening with COVID-19. And self-employed have to be able to prove their income a lot more as well. And so, that's a really big piece that the banks are looking at. And at the moment, banks require going back and asking the customers essentially whether their circumstances have changed because of the COVID-19. And expenses, of course, is all your ongoing commitments. So your debts, family, living expenses. A lot came about living expenses as part of the Hayne Royal Commission. So I guess it's really important to understand that you're going to be able to estimate those based on your expenses going forward once you get the loan. The bank will rely on the previous conduct that you've had to determine that as well. And essentially, once you are able to meet the capital, character, and capacity, that's how the bank will decide whether they're going to lend you money and how much they're going to lend you. Back to you.
Why don't we just turn our focus to the stock markets now, Sam? How are the markets shaping up at the moment?
Yeah, so another interesting week in the market, lots of different things happening there. So for the week, our market was actually 1.6% up, but extremely choppy on the back of the risk of the second wave that's there's some potential for that. But definitely make no mistake that this market does rejoice low COVID activity, and also gets very, very shaky very quickly on any news of any resurgence of that. So far we've had the bull market, we've had the bear market, now there's a suggestion that there's a third type of market, and we call that the kangaroo market. Constantly bouncing, which of course makes it very difficult to have any certainty as to what you should do. Now for us ourselves, we continue to draw info from a number of different sources to make sure that we get enough information, and also take away any biases that any particular source might have as well, because there are many different camps of things are going to get better and things are going to get worse, essentially. Retail sales had their best increase in 38 years in May, and that's really great, but we need to make sure that that is not just a short hit because of the pent-up demand of the previous month. So we are hearing more closures of stores, and the stories about those is getting more. So I guess we just have to wait and see how the June and July numbers comes through to understand what's happening there from a retail perspective. Of course, we have something new now, and that is the issue of the cyber security, and that's been thrown in the mix. And of course, all the different governments are throwing mud at each other right now about that. So this will certainly have an impact as a new issue, and we'll have to see how that plays out. Unemployment, obviously still high. We have some 3 million people reliant on the government support until September. I guess what that means is that we won't really know how things are going to be shaping until that finishes, and whether the government is going to continue or change that in some shape or form. There are some rumours that they might, in fact, continue on with JobKeeper, or change JobKeeper to the Job Seeker with adjustments. So I guess that will determine how much support we're going to get from the government once the first part of that is finished. But of course, the big question for us all is, what will happen if we do get a second wave, and if it's bigger than the first? Well, one thing for sure, at least we know what to do this time around, because we are more prepared than the first time. So at least that's a good thing. But obviously, that's not going to give us enough certainty right now, and we'll have to see how it all plays out over the next few months still. And lastly, I just want to remind everyone that end of financial year is obviously coming up. So don't forget to act on any of your super and investment strategies that will be suitable to your specific situation. And please do touch base with your advisor or your accountant in this regard.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sam. As always, very informative and very thorough. Next up, I'd like to go to Liza Garrido. Liza, I hear that there's some exciting changes from last week regarding employment and HR. Can you just provide us with an update, please?
Absolutely. Let me just, I'm going to be, this session this morning for me will be more informative rather than me providing my insights, because there have been some changes in the Modern Awards. So there's an update on Friday the 19th, the full bench of the Fair Work Commission handed down its annual wage review decision. And this decision applies to all employees covered by Modern Awards, Enterprise Awards, as well as for award-free employees as well. So the minimum wage in Modern Awards will be increased by 1.75% from the start of the first full pay period on or after the 1st of July 2020 for Group 1 awards. There are 3 groupings in awards, so this is for Group 1. The same increase will apply for Group 2 awards the start of the first full pay period on or after the 1st of November this year, and for Group 3 awards from the start of the first full pay period on or after the 1st of February 2021. This 1.75% increase will also apply to the national minimum wage for adults, increasing it by $13 to $753.80 per week, or $19.84 per hour from the start of the first full pay period on or after the 1st of July this year. This applies to juniors, employees under training arrangements, and employees with a disability, because there has also been a 1.75% increase in accordance with whether their award falls under Group 1, 2, or 3. Why am I talking about this? It's all part of what we've been talking about in the last few weeks about preparing your cash flow forecasts, making sure that you are aware that there will be any increases in wages that you need to pay to your current employees. And compliance is key in these very, very challenging times. So one of the other announcements last week, and it's actually been in the last couple of weeks, and it's been confirmed and it's all in the press at the moment, is the first industrial manslaughter case in Australia, which is a very unusual case in that the entire board of directors were charged. So what is industrial manslaughter? It's when a business or a person negligently causes the death of a worker. So it's the first for Australia in Queensland from a company in Brisbane called Brisbane Auto Recycling. And they were convicted of industrial manslaughter and fined $3 million. And the court basically decided that the workplace health and safety systems that they had were just inconvenient. It wasn't really comprehensive, thereby, the charges being placed. So the two directors were convicted of Category 1 offences under the Work Health and Safety Act and sentenced to 10 months imprisonment, wholly suspended for 20 months. The court obviously heard that there were no, the defendants, the directors had no safety systems in place, in particular, no traffic management plan. So there was really no step to prevent the injury from occurring in its entirety. So the charges followed a tragic incident when a worker was struck by a forklift in their wrecking yard in May 2019, and the worker subsequently died from the injuries. And unbeknown to the directors, the operator of the forklift was unlicensed and unskilled. And according to Brisbane Auto Recycling System of Work, he should not have been operating the forklift. And following the incident, obviously, he was charged with dangerous operation of a motor vehicle causing death. However, the workplace health and safety prosecutor and the safety consultant decided to take action against the company and its directors. So again, as I state, they're the first of their kind to be introduced by a state jurisdiction and leave negligent employers culpable for workplace deaths, and they have nowhere to hide now. Individuals guilty of industrial manslaughter will face up to 20 years imprisonment, and the corporate offenders liable for fines of up to 10 million. So once again, why am I making these, making emphasis of this? It's again, raising alarm bells basically to all of businesses and directors in the country, and amplifies the critical need to take work health and safety really seriously. That's it from me, Ian, and thanks to the panelists for listening.
Thanks very much, Liza. Very informative as always. We might go to Adam Lysle now. Now, Adam, I just wanted to ask you, what information has come out in the last 2 weeks that business owners should be aware of?
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, look, every month, people like the NAB and CBA, they release information and data that businesses should take a note of. And probably the most reliable and most continuous one of those that is widely regarded is the NAB Business Survey. And it's been released within the last couple of weeks. And there's a few points that I just want to encourage everyone to take away. First of all, the business confidence has improved by another 25 points in this last month. You're going to say, hang on for a minute, everyone's talking about recession. There has been a small increase in confidence, but it hasn't been enough, and it needs to be more. The big driver of this is forward orders, stocks, employment, profitability, and trading have all had slight improvement, and those conditions are still trending up. However, cash is being depleted, and 18% of all small business, SME business owners find it more difficult to get new borrowings, as Sam rightly pointed out before. The interesting thing here is that the service sectors are the ones that are actually the weakest. And usually the service sectors are the ones that are the strongest. That's interesting dynamics that are going on in the economy at the moment. The current conditions do appear to be as bad as the recession in the early 90s. In fact, probably, I would argue, a little bit worse. The telltale sign is what I mentioned earlier, the forward orders. They are almost at record lows. So any sign of recovery is quite a way off just yet. This does stand us into danger of more quarters of negative growth. And remember, the Reserve Bank of Australia's own definition is that GDP growth can be weak but not negative for a recession to be existent. So we will need to count all of our pennies. We'll need to make sure all of our assets that we have in our businesses are working for our business, not taking away from our business. So if you have an asset that isn't generating revenue, generating growth, or stimulating sustainability, you need to rationalise that asset and make sure that everything in your business is working well for you. The final point I'm going to say about this is, in terms of all of this going on, and this is, I guess, part of a series of education for our audience, is that staying connected with really good people like Ian and Rob and Liza and Sam and Bernard is absolutely your insurance policy to sustaining your business moving through this period. But allow those people to give you candid advice. Don't just say, oh yeah, you know, I'm connected, yep, Ian's a great accountant, he's looking after me. Give him the power to say, hey, stop. What are you doing? What's going on here? Why are you doing that? Give them the chance to really ask you the hard questions and get real numbers. If you do those things, I think you'll get through. And a financial year coming up, and the reality is, I truly believe that we're going to have another quarter of negative growth. So watch this space. Next week's going to be hot to trot with some more information, and thank you for listening.
Thanks very much, Adam. Very informative. We might go to Rob Skeen now. Rob, what's happening in the property market?
Thanks, Ian. Well, look, last week, Domain Group recorded even more properties going to auction, with 440 dwellings going under the gavel. A clearance rate of 63%, down on last week's 69% clearance rate, showing that more supply means less demand. Highest property sale of the week was an off-market sale in Rose Bay Road, Bellevue Hill, selling for $30 million. And it was bought by the next door neighbour, Louise Christie, who apparently bought it for her daughter to live in. I think we were born into the wrong family, ladies and gents. Bargain buy of the week. Have you ever dreamed of sailing into the island life in the Sunshine State of Queensland? Well, now, yes, Adam, I can see you. Now is a good time to buy a little slice of island paradise. Almost 1,000 blocks of land are up for sale in the beautiful southeast Queensland's most idyllic, desirable island location. 600 square metre blocks, and here it is, folks, selling for as low as $15,000. How good is that? Now, this is all due, of course, to the downturn in the real estate market up there as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. And it goes to show there is a silver lining in every dark cloud. So get on it, folks. Get on it. 15 grand. Buy yourself a slice of heaven. These blocks are located in Russell Island, Lamb Island, Macleay Island, as well as Karagaraga Island. I think I said that correctly. No, not sure. Now, vacant blocks on North Stradbroke Island, who we all know North Stradbroke Island, they sell for around $300,000 or more. So there's certainly a lot of upside in terms of prices nearby. That's all from me, folks. Have a great week.
Hang on,
very much.
Rob, I want to know, why aren't you singing Slice of Heaven? I mean, you can't talk about the song without singing it.
Well, yeah, I didn't want to ruin my segment by singing.
Maybe Bernie might sing it for us, but that's not the New Zealand song, so I don't know what the Samoan version is, Bernie. But if you could just give us an update, Bernard, on what people need to be aware of, small business owners in particular, about any of the latest developments in the insurance sector, please.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks, guys. Mate, interesting developments. I've actually been following this article the last couple of weeks, but you know, I reported quite early on in our segments about under the business pack insurances and underneath the business interruption section that policies won't respond because of the exclusion around infectious diseases. Now, some of the old business interruption wordings refers to an old act that no longer applies. So what this means is, what some lawyers are saying is that the business interruption exclusion around pandemic exclusions is null and void because the policy wording refers to an act that no longer exists. Now, insurers obviously being insurers, they're saying that the intent of the exclusion is to exclude any pandemic, regardless of whether it refers to an old act or a current act, and they won't be paying out insurance claims. So this hasn't really been tested, but there seems like there is a groundswell of, I guess, customers who have been out of pocket because of the business interruption and downturn due to COVID-19 will be testing, I guess, this exclusion. So very interesting developments. I also find it quite interesting that insurers are referring to the word the intent, because usually when we say intent, that's an argument that us insurance brokers and advisors use when we are, I guess, battling the insurers to try and get a claim paid. So very interesting that the insurers are using that word intent. But one thing we can all agree on, and this is supported by some articles that have come out, is that if this policy is to respond to downturn in COVID-19 as a result of COVID-19, it's going to be a massive implications on the industry. It's probably going to set the industry and go bankrupt, has the potential to send it bankrupt. So some reports also say that insurers are looking at potential sort of things they can include in terms of the downturn of COVID-19 and covering COVID-19 and other types of scenarios of infectious diseases moving forward, but it will need to be supported by government. It can't be something that the insurers bear the brunt of by themselves. Another interesting thing and report that I've read just this morning is, and something that we really haven't spoke about, is the impact that COVID-19 has had on the community and community events. Now, I'm talking about local sporting events. I'm talking about, your local school fair, talking about council events that, support a lot of charities. Now, these events contribute about $1.1 billion to the economy. It also supports about $70 million worth of much needed funds for a lot of small communities and charities to help fundraise some of their programs. Now, I know Rob and I are quite involved in our communities, and we know that even our events have been impacted by this. Now, the flow-on effect that this has had onto, things such as artists, photographers, merchandise sales. So, it supports about 11,000 jobs as well in the local economy. So, insurers such as SLE and Sports Cover have come to the party. They've felt the pinch as well. What they're sort of seeing is that all their clients have been impacted by COVID-19. All their clients have either cancelled an event or had to delay an event because of COVID-19. And them as an insurer has actually, delayed payments and receiving payments and premiums because of COVID-19. So you can only imagine the impact that it has had on their bottom dollar. So they're the two, I guess, main points I want to talk about today. But just on the back of Lisa's comments, and that's massive news, Lisa, when you spoke about some of the, the death claim that happened in Brisbane. And I've spoken about this the last couple of weeks, the importance of having management liability insurance. Now, one of the covers that management liability insurance offers is what we call statutory liability. Now, statutory liability is basically when a governing body or an authority issues a fine and penalty against the business. Now, this instance, it would be work cover. Work cover has obviously issued a fine and penalty against the directors and has actually held them personally liable. This is massive. Management liability covers against fines and penalties issued against the directors. Directors may have taken some shortcuts. We don't know the circumstances of it. They may have taken some shortcuts in terms of cutting funds towards their risk management program. All these things, there is an insurance policy that covers these types of things. It's not something that all trades do sort of look at and think it is a requirement to have a management liability policy, but I cannot stress enough the importance of having this type of insurance policy. That's it for me, Ian.
Thanks very much, Bernie. Before we go to me, because I'm just having some technical issues, we might just go to the panel and see if any of our panel has any questions for any of our other panelists. Does anyone have any questions?
Well, I just have a comment on what Bernie just mentioned, guys. This is why I wanted to present the two cases, or the award update, and then of course the Brisbane auto recycling case, because this is now, there is nowhere to hide now for directors and officers in any business. If they are negligent in any of their duties, whether it be to the modern award and the legislation or compliance with wages, as well as definitely, absolutely now for workplace health and safety, it is more serious than ever. Corporate manslaughter has never really been a common occurrence. It was really hard to prove directors to be liable for negligence in this case, but there has been a law passed already, and it is called industrial manslaughter, and it is now, there's nowhere to hide now for directors and officers. So apart from taking the insurances and looking at risk management, it's also looking at all the systems that you must have in place to ensure that there is safety and absolute safety in the workplace for workers to go back home to their families and not face any death or massive injuries that impact their lives. So I'm glad, Bernie, that you pointed that out. It's unprecedented again, this industrial manslaughter case.
Yeah, 100%, Lisa, and I'll just quickly add to that. I know we're a bit short for time, but especially in the trades area, the building area, during this tough time, they'd like to contract stuff out to contractors. It's even more high risk now. It's even more important to make sure you have risk mitigation processes in place, and also, more important that you have some sort of management liability policy in place to help you protect against these types of events.
I have a quick question for you, Sam. You talked about how credit rating is so important nowadays. I suppose we're following the American model, right, where you miss a payment, it gets recorded, and it's a black mark against your name. With the pandemic that's going on, there's a lot of people that are sinking further and further into credit card debt. What can they do about that? And there are companies that can come in and assist them. So, for example, if they've got 3 cards that are maxed out, can the company come in, consolidate that, and help negotiate that down for them?
Yes, there is, Rob. So it's a bit complicated in the sense that the providers will need to look at why they got into that issue to begin with, if it's due to the COVID-19 or not. If it's due to the COVID-19, I think you find that the banks currently, or the credit providers, are a bit more sympathetic towards, giving you a leeway to be able to work your way through. But if it's a negligence on the part of the person who used the money to begin with, that's a different story. Yes, there are credit repair providers that will be able to help you with that. You can even go yourself and speak with the lenders as to coming up with a payment plan or an offer to settle on those debts as well. But there's a process that you need to go through over a period of time to get to that as a starting point. My suggestion is, as a starting point, speak with the lender, whoever lent you the money, and have a frank conversation about why you are where you're at, and you might be able to work that through with them. And of course, there's a solution for some of these as well, and that solution is to potentially use a balance transfer of some sort for a period of time. That buys you a bit of time to not incur the interest costs, but still be able to pay it off over a period of time. But ultimately, you need to look at your essentially the character and capacity to be able to make that right.
Can I also add on to Sam's comments there, because he's bang on the money. From a risk perspective, if you're going to enter into one agreement with one credit card provider, my suggestion is you do it with all, and you get in some way, shape or form an agreement in writing that you do have a moratorium, or you do have some sort of abeyance or some kind of process that they can't just pull the trigger as soon as the rain pours outside. And you get everyone on the same even keel. So don't promise one thing to one bank and promise something completely different to the other. So believe it or not, they actually talk to each other. Just be careful with those things. Sam is absolutely correct. All I'm saying is just make sure it's all across the board and you deal with all of it at the same time.
We might actually go over to Ian. Ian, how's things going in your world, mate?
Yeah, thanks very much, Bernie. So what I wanted to touch on today was, being the 22nd of June, we're literally only 8 days out now from the end of financial year, which means that business owners only have another 8 days to make sure that they do all their tax planning, which is a really important piece. And I wanted to touch on, or just build on what Sam was talking about in regards to the super contributions. So just remember that super contributions from a tax point of view are only considered for a deduction once they've been received by the fund. Now, before they're received by the fund, they need to go through the small business, the superannuation small business clearinghouse. Now, in order for the clearinghouse to then pass it on to the fund, the clearinghouse needs to receive these by tomorrow. So there's literally only 1 day left to make sure that the superannuation deductions are going to be allowable from a tax point of view to be paid. So that's a really important piece. Now, just remember that the maximum that an individual can contribute is 25,000, and there is also the bring forward cap. If you missed out on previous years, you can make up that balance this year. So if you only contributed 20,000 last year, then you could potentially contribute $30,000 this year. But it's also really important to just double check with your employees. If you are looking at bringing forward some superannuation contributions for them to make sure that they are deductible for 30 June, it is just worthwhile checking with them that they haven't had a change in their superannuation fund, because often that happens. Employers go to pay the superannuation for their employees by the cutoff date being tomorrow to get to the small business clearinghouse and then to get to the fund. And they realize that, oh, the employee has changed their superannuation fund details. So it's really important just to double check that the information that you've got in your system are correct. The other thing that I wanted to touch on also was, I know that a lot of individual taxpayers out there are going to be really eager come 1 July to lodge their 30 June 2020 tax returns. But just be aware, and the ATO has made note of this, that they do want people to take time and not rush it. Now, the reason being is because of single touch payroll. So the ATO will receive the gross payments and the tax withheld for each individual, but they only receive those once the employer has finished reporting them to them through their single touch payroll software. Okay, so the deadlines is for employers with 20 or more employees, they've got until the 14th of July to finalize their single touch payroll with the ATO. Now, employers with 19 or fewer employees, they have until the 31st of July. Now, what that means is that someone might be really eager to go and lodge their tax return on the 2nd of July, but the ATO is not going to have all the information necessary yet. And what that will result in is once the ATO does receive the single touch payroll information from the employer, they will automatically issue an amended assessment to that taxpayer. So it might result in them clawing money back from any refund that they gave you. So my advice is just wait until those dates. So the 31st for employers under 19 employees, or the 14th of July for employers with 20 or more staff. But also just double check with the head of HR in your company and just say, hey, if you could just let us know when our single touch payroll has been finalized to the ATO, so we know that we can lodge our tax returns. And that will avoid any amendments being issued by the ATO, because it just works out to be a little bit messy whenever you have to go and amend returns. So that was all that I had today. Did anyone else have any other questions for any of the panelists?
Just as an addition, Ian, for whenever an employee wants to change their super fund, they must complete the superannuation choice form. It is all downloadable on your whatever super fund you're at. So otherwise, again, your HR managers or your payroll managers should have copies of these. So again, that's from a compliance perspective. So in the midst of rushing for all of this, you still need to make sure that you dot the I's and cross the T's. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Question for you, Ian. So are there any prepayment of expenses that you would recommend before in the financial year for businesses?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's always a good thing. I do, I mean, with a lot of my clients, each year we sit down and we go through tax planning, and prepayments is obviously something that can be done. For example, let's turn our focus away from business taxpayers for a second, and we can look at individual taxpayers. So individuals with rental properties, for example, they could prepay their interest for the following year and then receive a deduction for that as well. Businesses as well, so they could prepay items such as rent. Now, once again, Sam, it needs to be in line with the business's cash flow. So they need to make sure that they can afford it. But really what's most important is that they, as long as they're aware, so they sit down with their advisor and they work out what they can prepay and what they can't prepay. And if they can afford it and it's going to work out with their cash flow, then yes, it is a good idea, because obviously they're going to get the tax deduction for it this year as opposed to next year. So really it's more of just a deferral mechanism, deferring the tax from this year to the next year. But remember, next year the tax rate goes down to 26%. So, you know, there's a lot to consider there.
Thank you. And a question for Benny. In light of the cyber news that we've had in the last week or so, do you think there's going to be an impact on the cost of cyber insurance going up?
Yeah, look, in terms of the cyber insurance, mate, look at things such as working from home and, you know, Australia's a little bit behind times when it comes to cyber insurance. Now, cyber insurance and products have been well established in the US and Europe, and that closely follows some of the laws they have around cyber insurance. There is an impact in terms of premium because there are a lot of more cases increasing, you know, cyber claims. So I'd say, yeah, premiums are increasing, but people should consider it. People should definitely consider cyber insurance, not only because of working from home cases, but because everyone's moving into you know, in the cloud, working on the cloud and in the cloud, sorry, and you know, businesses are working remotely and online. It's important that you guys have some sort of cyber insurance protection policy.
Alrighty, did anyone else have any more questions? If not, I'd like to thank all of our panelists today. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank our listeners and viewers, and we look forward to seeing you next week on the 29th of June. Thank you very much.
Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, just stay here, guys. It's okay.